the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, talking with my good friend, Mr. John Henkel from NETGEAR. Welcome, sir.
Hey there. Good to see you again, Tim.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Reason we're taking time today is NETGEAR has quite a lot coming down the pipeline ahead of Infocom and then shortly thereafter towards the end of the year. Let's talk about a couple of things. Number one, the M4350, this brand new switch you guys have coming out. Talk for a second, really, first and foremost, where it came from, because it's got a history here, right? And the ones and zeros that you guys took to craft this new switch is actually quite impressive.
Definitely. And we actually did 1 zeros and 2s in this one. It's so advanced. We did all those. Sorry. So yeah, I'm making light of a really great thing. So NETGEAR came out with the M4300 series. I think it's in 2016, a long time ago. And then that was being used for AV over IP, and they started looking. Laurent Massia, who I call the father of Pro AV at NETGEAR, he really took a look at that and said, okay, what do people need? What's different? So we also convened a panel of integrators, consultants in the industry back when I first started NETGEAR in late 2019. And they came up with a lot of feedback for us from the new series, which became the M4250. So those guys came out. Those are more for 1G applications. They have some 10 gig uplinks. But they look different. They look great in an AV rack, clean aesthetic, ports in the back, or you can turn it around if you want. So that became the heritage from 4300s to 4250s. And now we looked at the needs the last couple of years, and we're coming out with the 4350s, which is a line of 12 models coming up in 2 different phases. So the first phase coming up, announced at Infocom, we'll have them there at the booth. The product pages will be live then as well. But that's a really the next step evolution in these AV special switches that we've done.
One of the things about this new 4350, the M4350, is the increase in PoE power. Talk about why that's important and the growth of PoE devices that you guys are seeing. Yeah,
and we have tons of switches. NETGEAR in general, NETGEAR Business has hundreds of switches and a bunch of PoE ones. And PoE's got a couple different stages. You guys watching may already all know all this, but there's PoE, PoE Plus, PoE Plus Plus, and there's 2 forms of that. So up to 90 watts per port. As we start seeing things like powered speakers and other endpoints, there's a whole bunch of things, lighting, LED lighting and stuff. We actually in our booth at the trade shows, we're using an all-in-one PoE powered PC for our demos. That's pretty slick. So there's all kinds of that stuff, and they have varying levels of power needs. So what we've done is also not limit you on our switches to say only got 4 ports of that PoE plus available. Our switches usually in the AV switches are all across the board. So we go up to, like 3,300 watts, I think, of power budget for PoE. Crazy amount. And like I said, a dozen different models. So a wide range of that with PoE plus. And of course, they'll do the other versions as well. No big deal. So that's a big thing. We're seeing huge growth in that across the company, certainly in AV as well, to power the endpoints, power the speakers, all that kind of stuff.
You mentioned that your various trade shows, you're just coming off of NAB, National Association of Broadcasters. Lots of talk there about SMPTE 2110. It's also making its way into AV as well. Several booths will be there at Infocom June 14th through the 16th that are highlighting and touting the power of SMPTE 2110, and this new M4350 also supports 2110. Why is that important?
Yeah, I'm going to qualify that too, Tim, because so the 4350s are coming in 2 phases. Okay. I think it's 5 models first and then 7 later in the year. A couple models in the later in the year set will be the ones that support 2110. And that just requires more clocking, more precise control over that signal that we haven't been able to put in the switches so far. So those are coming. It's a little later in the year, but they'll be coming. That's important because a lot of broadcasters are switching over to an AV over IP or an all IP system. And that's, as we know from commercial technology and residential, it's much more flexible, it's more scalable. But for broadcasters, there's a few more specific needs they have to have. And it's got to be precise. I mean, you got to have broadcast, you have to have audio, video in sync, and it's got to arrive at the right time. So we're taking our time to come out with that to make sure it's right. So using some new chipsets and things like that to make sure that it is proper. And we're gonna make sure we okay that with all the broadcasting manufacturer partners we have and make sure it's ready to go. So that'll be later in the year. Also, though, part of IPMX, if you haven't heard about that, right? IPMX, the AIMS Alliance, is taking SMPTE 2110 more for commercial applications and making that easier to implement as well. So that's something else to look at. And that we support, I think, right now on our switches.
All right. A new router you guys have coming out, the PR460X. Talk about that and the differences between, the M4350 switch, which takes the internet traffic and routes it different, sends it different ways. The router, though, is what's taking the internet in and then able to distribute it. What's new with this new router? Well,
we've had some routers in the past, and it's been a while since we've had a router. We took the time off to kind of check out what the industry needs. So this is what we call a professional router. PR460X will be coming out. And that, just like you said, it just helps connect the devices to the internet. So routing things through there. It's another piece in our puzzle that really helps complete that picture for all kinds of installations where you need a router, you need the switches, and then our wireless access points would also complete that. So then we got the full circle right there. We got everything you need now.
Last thing here is NETGEAR Engage. Let's talk about that. First and foremost, what is NETGEAR Engage?
So that's a great piece of software, and it's kind of unknown for some circles, really. That, if you remember on our 4250s, that was the AV GUI that was built in there. And that's that ease of configuration where you pick a profile for Dante or for NDI or whatever, and you assign it to ports and you click enter. Well, that was built into the switches before. You had to log into each one to get that. And that's a real pain if you got multiple switches. So we took that software out and made that a standalone application called Engage. It's a lightweight application, meaning you don't install it on your PC or Mac. You just run it off a USB stick. It's really simple. But that gets you access to all your switches in your network. We'll discover them, first of all, and you can then update software and or firmware on a bunch of those. You can also set those set up like a site. So if you're in a multi-switch setup, you can send those profiles across multiple switches and configure that and have everything, look at the status. You can monitor those switches as well. Talk about PoE. You can do PoE settings, of course, across the board. So it's just a really cool, simple way to administer those switches in more of an AV environment.
Talk about it for a second, though. This is something that more and more manufacturers are getting into, and that is the software development and creating these tools and creating these mechanisms for the dealers to help the end users manage their systems and make them better, faster, stronger. Why is that important, and why is it important to get it off of the switch and make it more of an application based?
Well, it's ease of use and helping these integrators not have to roll a truck every time something comes up too. So we have also had our other software called Insight that manages our non-AV switches and some access points, but not the AV switches. So those sort of things you can access remotely, and Engage will get there eventually. Engage still needs to be run locally on the network, but we have a huge roadmap for that. It's just software. It's much easier to iterate on that. But that really helps one person manage multiple systems, not have to walk around each switch in different rooms, different floors even, right? All that, and try to understand what's going on, try to troubleshoot things. So it's a real centralized single pane of glass type of management. And that's huge. The best thing about Engage really is that profile-based approach that works for the multiple switches. And that'll work for the 4200, 4250s, 43s, and 4350s, of course, all the switches.
The other aspect of this, though, is, and you mentioned not needing to walk around or roll a truck, and there's a time savings there as well. And whether you are an IT manager or you're a tech manager in a college or university, you're paying per hour for that person, that technician, to come through and do those things. If they can sit in one room, in one rack, right, and manage all of yours and update everything, it's a lot faster, it's a lot simpler, and it streamlines the work as well.
Definitely. And, we know a lot of AV people don't know IT either. So that's the other thing that we're helping them feel comfortable with these installations, and they'll get more and more comfortable with it. And actually, IT people are getting on the board as well. They're using Engage too, because they realize the power of having the configuration certified and tossed out there. They don't have to worry about somebody setting something incorrectly and flooding their network, perhaps.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Not good.
John, we were recording this about a month out from InfoComm. You'll be seeing this, before InfoComm. So obviously, we know that NETGEAR will be there the 14th through the 16th of June. Talk for a second about, not just the M4350s and all the stuff that we talked about today, but what else will we find in the booth?
You're going to find all of our awesome system engineers. We'll have those guys on staff. That's our Pro AV design team that Laurent leads. Laurent will be there as well, so you can see him. So if you have questions about switches, about our switches, or just networking in general, they can answer your questions. We're also doing a panel, and I forgot to get this ready before the show, but Laurent and I'm just the color guy for this, but Laurent's going to be teaching a class on how to design your network. That's on Thursday at Infocom. And I'll also be I'll be moderating a panel on the evolution of video walls, AV over IP in video walls too. So that's going to be a great panel. And then we'll have demos at the booth, hopefully about every hour. Laurent's going to have a demo on the big screen there on our megapixel wall and show you some of the tips and tricks for designing your network. It's going to be really, really busy. Come on by.
All right, very good. John Henkel from NETGEAR. Thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or NETGEAR?
NETGEAR is easy, netgear.com/AV. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to find it.
All right, very good. John Henkel, we'll see you at Infocom. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Find this program and a host of others. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.